Hello there, welcome back and all that. So, in the last video I showed you some of the stuff I picked up recently. This is one of the items, so I thought we could have a look at that today. Cambridge Audio Azur 640A integrated amplifier. Looks quite a nice amplifier. It's a little bit digital. I mean, it's all digital controlling and all that, but it's supposed to have a remote control. Yeah, I can see the infrared receiver down there, down on that bit there, but it's a bit rough condition, as are most things that come from where I got it. It could do with a lot of cleaning, but I did download the manual for it, and if I look at the well, try finding it on my phone. Okay, these are the specifications. So it seems fairly powerful. 75 watts into 8 ohms, 120 watts into 4 ohms, and standby power consumption 10 watts. Well, I wouldn't run that in standby then, would I? That's quite a high amount of power to be running when it's not doing anything, and can't afford to do that anymore with the cost of electricity as it is. That'll be quite a bit over a year. And so that's enough of that. So does seem to work, strangely enough. As I said, it's in rough condition, but it has got one annoying thing. If I turn the balance, that is really nasty, and it's gone into protection there, and at the risk of damaging my speakers. That was not nice at all. But in theory, if I turn it off, nothing happens. Okay, well, that needs investigation, because that balance control was really not nice at all. Could be that it just needs cleaning, so that would be the first option, just to clean that. But this is just a start of this look at this amplifier. It's freezing cold out here, so I'm not going to do any more today, so I'll get back on it when it's a bit warmer. So I've got a top off here. Looks fairly exciting inside. Nice big transformer. Not terribly impressed with the heat sinking. You'd expect it to be bigger than that for 75 watt amplifier, and it's very flimsy. I mean, that should be on the back of the rear panel, ideally. But what we're more interested in is the balance control, which is down there, and it just seems to be a normal pot. And of course we've got a motorized volume controller, so that pot, I think, needs to be sprayed with switch cleaner if I can get in there, so I haven't got much switch cleaner left, so I'll see if I can find it. Okay, found the switch cleaner. If we go in from this side, there's a hole at the back, so I'm not sure how far in that would penetrate. There's also a hole in the side of the I can't see very well around the camera. and I'm getting more on the board than I am inside it. There's also another hole at the other side, but I can't turn the can upside down because I've got not much left. Anyway, I think some of that went in. I've got it all turned off at the moment, so I just rotate the balance a few times and then we'll give it another test. And this time I'm going to test it with some 10 ohm resistors in series with my speakers, because I do not like that nasty noise. That transient peak was not very nice at all. So let me rearrange things and make sure my wires are not flopping around. And here's the 10 ohm resistors in series, 2 of those. So plug it back in. I don't think I need a signal, so turn it on. That's completely silent. That is interesting. That balance control now is completely silent, but let me put a signal into it. Okay, signal's now connected. And that's working perfectly now. No nasty scratching. Try the other ones. They seem okay, but I shall spray those as well. And I will spray the volume control also. So I'll go ahead and do that, and then we'll do some tests on it. Not entirely sure what everything does on this. You've got a direct button. I have to read the manual. But I think that just bypasses the tone controls. It does sound a bit different. And apart from that, we've got all the normal things you expect down here. Auxiliary phono, okay. Auxiliary phono, it's interesting. Not quite sure. Just basically line inputs. Tape monitor, whatever. I think it just needs a really good clean up, and then it will probably be a half decent amplifier, which is minus its remote, which is a shame. Everybody always loses the remotes, don't they? So I'm going to go ahead and clean up the rest of the controls. Maybe hoover it out because it's got a fair bit of rubbish inside it. So it's a day later and it's freezing cold in the workshop, and I've given it a fairly good clean up. Got all the most of the rubbish out that was inside it as well. Also, as you may be able to tell, I've re-sprayed the volume knob with black paint, so it looks almost perfect again now. And I think it still works. I don't see why it shouldn't. In fact, it was working. So let's put some music through it. Better not play too much. All that copyright rubbish. That was a bit of Julie Covington, Only Women Bleed. And believe it or not, that song was written by Alice Cooper. So there's a bit of useless information for you. Now, I'm going to do some technical measurements on this. And I may adjust the bias if I can be bothered. I think the amount of work I put into this is proportional to what it's worth. I don't think it's really worth a lot, but anyway, I just wanted to show you something inside which is interesting to me, not to you. But I came to the realization that I've seen this before, this amplifier. In fact, I fixed it. And if you see that chip down there, that is responsible for switching the various inputs. It's an analog switch. So all the signals from the various inputs go through that chip. Then you can select which one comes out the chip. And it must be 3 or 4 years ago I had this for repair, and the symptoms were it just wasn't doing anything. I traced it to that chip. I managed to get one, fortunately, and now it works perfectly again. And so I think that's enough of all that. But what we want to do now is connect it up to a dummy load, and maybe do some measurements on it. Heatsink is warming up nicely, so I can do the bias adjustments also. Perhaps I ought to do the bias first. And as we look down there, we can see, if I had something to point with, there's the bias adjustment. Nice that I've used a 10-turn pot on there. And the resistors you have to measure across are these in the emitters of the transistors. And the bias should be 13 millivolts when it's warmed up. I did say greater than 13 millivolts. Well, that's a rather ambiguous statement, isn't it? Greater than 13 millivolts could mean several volts. So that's not a very well worded paragraph about it doing the bias. But I'm going to leave it on there for an hour or so to warm up, or half an hour, because it is very cold in here. So I've got the meter leads connected across the resistor on one of the channels, and I haven't adjusted anything. If we look up there at the meter, 13.2 millivolts, around there anyway. So I don't need to adjust that. Higher than 13 millivolts it says. Fine. So I'll go over to the other channel now. If I can do it easily around the camera. Okay, that's on the other resistor, up to the meter, and 12 millivolts. Okay, well I can tweak that a little bit. I don't think it would make the slightest difference to anything really, but just get on the does tend to take time to settle when you're doing this. 13.3, how's that? But more or less the same as the other channel. Okay, I think that's good enough for doing that. So I'll just wire it all up, and constant catarrh I have, and yeah, wire it up to dummy load, and stick 1 kilohertz through it, do distortion measurement and power measurement. Okay, so what I've done is I'm outputting a signal here from the HP audio analyzer, 1 kilohertz, 1 volt RMS, That goes into the CD input on the back of the amplifier, and there's my dummy load, which is connected to both channels. And I'm going into both channels, of course, on the amplifier. And look, it's my oscilloscope screen. If I can make this stay still. So I've got two channels on that screen, although the yellow one is predominating. But if I turn the volume up a bit, you can see there is a hint of blue behind it. That's the other channel, and they're very symmetrical in size, pretty close anyway. And that's my getting close to the peak there, flat topping, distortion. And if we go up to the audio analyzer, it's at the moment reading watts into 8 ohms. When I can get this stupid thing to stop moving around. Okay, that's good enough. So it's reading 44 watts, and I'm looking at the screen. I'll watch for the distortion to start up, which is about there. So I'm getting 67 watts. 68 watts, maybe 65 before distortion. So I don't think it quite meets the 75 watt specification, but does it matter? Probably not. The difference between 65 and 75, it certainly wouldn't be noticeable if you ever wanted to run it that high. But these things starting to warm up slightly, and there's nothing to do with the power supply voltage it's set to, because it's only got one setting of 230 volts. So, I mean, I guess it could be the capacitors in the power supply are sagging a bit. The rails are sagging a bit, that's what I meant, but due to the age of the capacitors. But I'm certainly not going to replace those. But just take it up again. There we are, that's distortion coming on there. 64 watts. Fine. And what you're supposed to do now is test for actual distortion at full output. I'll just go and find out what that's supposed to be, because my phone's in the house. Okay, so now we're going to do the distortion check, and it, according to the manual, it's 0.002% at full output. So if I crank this up till it's just below clipping, which is about there, and we're getting 0.6%, so it's not particularly great. I back it down a bit. Okay, that looks better, and I can see there is less distortion on the screen. Still not 0.002 though. I don't like running it this high for too long. Back it down a bit more, doesn't make any difference much. So I don't know what the reason would be for the distortion being higher, but in practice you're not going to notice any of that when you're using it. So I think, turn it right down again, I think that's about it really. That's probably all I'm going to do with this amplifier. As I said, it's probably not worth a lot of money, so not worth messing around with it too much. It might improve if I changed all the filter capacitors, but it probably wouldn't. But at least I made it look nice again. Don't like the fact that it takes 10 watts in standby mode, because you can't turn it off completely, because it's expecting it to be itself to be turned on by a remote control. And these days of high electricity prices, You wouldn't want that running at 10 watts. If it is 10 watts, it's probably not quite as high as that, but who knows. Anyway, that's about the end of this video, and the next one I think will be on the other amplifier I got, which was a other hi-fi amplifier, and that was the Pioneer A333, I think it was, which I'm going to clean up before I do a video on it. Okay, thanks for watching, bye for now.